The Los Angeles Kings. A lot to talk about here. For the fourth consecutive spring, they lost to the Oilers in the opening round of the postseason. And before we get into that series, which was one that they completely had in hand on several occasions and let get away, let's talk about the moves that Ken Holland has done in his first year as Kings general manager. Here are the signings. Corey Perry from Edmonton, 1 year, $2 million. Yoel Armia from Montreal, 2 years, $2.5 million. Cody Ceci from Dallas, 4 years, $4.5 million, which I think surprised a lot of us. Brian Dumoulin comes in from Jersey, 3 years, $4 million per year. So just those first four players, average age 34.3 years. And I believe a lot of people had questions about these signings.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of criticism of Ken. And let's say one thing, you talk about how LA has been knocked out 4 years in a row, which led to Rob Blake resigning as general manager of LA. And I guess Luc Robitaille and crew thought, if we can't beat Edmonton, we might as well go get their general manager. So Ken, a year later, he had a year off, ends up being the GM and he takes criticism for the age of the players that he signed in Dumoulin and Ceci and so on. They're certainly not going to be a young group because up front, never mind Perry, who's might be the oldest player in the league, and Brent Burns maybe a shade older, and Alex Ovechkin's up there too, but never mind Corey Perry. Kopitar is getting on. He still plays fantastically. And their top defenseman, Drew Doughty, is getting long in the tooth as well. So this is a team that's got to do better now in order to make their fans happy. They can't keep losing in the first round.
Could we assume, though, that with the signing of Perry, that the Kings are a shoo-in to represent the Western Conference in the Stanley Cup Final, only to use because Perry has made the final 5 out of the last 6 years and has lost all of them? He's the only player in the history of the league to reach the Stanley Cup Final with 5 different franchises.
He's amazing. He's an ever-ready bunny. He keeps on going and going. And, of course, he has a relationship with Ken Holland because it was Ken that signed him in Edmonton after Chicago had released him. Yeah, it might be the right magic secret sauce for LA to get into the final.
Let's talk about the other moves during the course of the summer, and then we'll get into some other discussion. They also had goaltender Anton Forsberg, signed as a UFA from Ottawa, and defenseman Samuel Bolduc, who is not qualified by the New York Islanders. The Forsberg signing is also done because David Riddick signed as a UFA with the Islanders, and they also lost Vladislav Gavrikov, who signed with the New York Rangers. In terms of players that they held on to during the course of this offseason, we'll start with the UFAs. Goaltender Phoenix Copley will probably be the number 3. And left wing Andrei Kuzmenko, who came over towards the deadline from the Philadelphia Flyers after he'd been acquired by Philadelphia from Calgary, and also promising right wing Alex Laferriere, 3 years, 4.1 AAV. So you look at this club right now, and even though they are veteran, they are older, they've got some good young players on this team, and you've got to go back and look at that series against the Oilers this past spring to see how much more growing pains this team has to endure before they take that next step and at least get into the second round. So in that first round series against the Oilers, to put this in perspective, the Kings defense was second in the NHL behind Winnipeg. 2.48 goals per game with Darcy Kemper leading the way in net. They wound up giving up 27 goals in the 6 games against the Oilers. You remember in game 1, they blew that 5-2 lead, but they wound up winning in the final minute on a goal by Philip Deneau. They won that one 6-5, but that was a harbinger of what was to come. because in game 3, they had a 4-3 lead with 6:42 left. Vander Kane tied the game, and then that brutal challenge by head coach Jim Hiller led to the winning goal by Evan Bouchard 10 seconds after that. And then in game 4, they had a 3-1 lead in the third period. Bouchard ties the game with 29 seconds left. If you remember, Quinton Byfield made that ill-advised play at the blue line trying to stick handle out of the zone as opposed to just flipping the puck out. So you look at this, they were close. And when they exerted that physical style on the Oilers, Edmonton couldn't move. And this was really a case in multiple games in that series where they simply took their foot off the gas.
They simply couldn't hold on. Edmonton had the confidence that they could come back, and they did. And the team that we had seen all regular season disappeared for LA, I think. You're right. Jim Hiller made a bad move, but he's a rookie head coach calling for that challenge. And that cost them dearly. And that's all it takes sometimes in the playoffs is one thing like that. But on the upside for this team, Kuzmenko was very impressive to me, the way he could play, especially on the power play. Adrian Kempe, I think, is a young star that's going to continue to progress. Kevin Fiala is a good player. Remember last year he was late for a meeting and wasn't dressed by Jim Hiller during the regular season. Quinton Byfield has a real upside to him. He's coming along in his game. I like Moore. I like Danault. I like Fogle. So they do have some depth on this team. They don't have stars up front. They don't have, besides Kempe, but they've got, if you want to manage by committee, I mean, they've got, I think, 4 solid lines. Now, where I think, Vic, that they've tailed off a little bit is what can we expect out of Drew Doughty? And they lost Gavrikov in free agency to the Rangers. And that's a big blow to them because he's an excellent defenseman to play with Mikey Anderson or with Doughty or whoever they deem that. And they go and replace him with the older guys that we just mentioned. So I don't think their defense is great. It's serviceable, but it's not great. I think they're better up front than they are on the back line.
And the defense is probably mid-range and the forwards in the top half of the league for sure. But you could also tell that this team is, even though they've got some good young players, and Byfield, mistake aside, in game 4 of the series against the Oilers, I thought it had a really strong second half. And I think that trajectory is going to just continue to go upwards here. But they're not deep in terms of their prospects. And given the ages of their veterans and the guys that they signed, and the fact that Jim Hiller was not brought in by Ken Holland, because obviously Ken Holland starting his first year, Jim Hiller's already there. What do you think the patience level is going to be if this team gets off to a slow start?
Yeah, I would think that Ken's been around a long time, so he'll probably be very patient with the coaching. But once he sees it, if and when he sees it can't keep going, he knows enough people around the league and knows who's out there, who's available. And I guess first on that list is going to be Peter DeBoer. And I don't know that Ken knows Peter DeBoer, but I do know that Peter DeBoer is a heck of a coach in the league. And it's not very comfortable for a second-year head coach who disappointed in last year's playoffs to be starting the season with Peter DeBoer looking over his shoulder. And so it'll be interesting to see if Jim Hiller can get this group to get a good start going, because you need to have a good start. We've learned that in the league. You can't come back from a bad start to the regular season. It's really hard.